Okay, good. Finally. Am I connected? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. That took forever.
Simon may be unmuted.
Yeah, he's muted. Oh, okay. Simon, could you unmute yourself for just a moment?
Hi.
No, for us to, so we can hear the chickens.
Be close to the chickens.
I'll bring one over here.
We bought some chickens.
Oh, okay.
All right, good. How you doing? Conrad's here. You want to say hi? Go ahead. Feel free. All right. Well, have we lost anybody? No one was worried I was late. My computer just was taking forever. It installed some updates. Seems like it always does that. Oh, those are nice. You got to hold them up a little higher. There you go.
We just had chicken for dinner.
Brings back good memories, huh?
Okay, those are cute.
Okay. Oh, can I name some? Delicious.
Yeah.
Pie,
And chicken nugget.
nugget.
Colonel Sanders.
Nugget. Yeah.
Good. Well, nice to have you joining us on the
Chicken strip.
Zoom there, Simon.
Crispy.
And then let's see, as far as Dave Sauer goes,
Crispy and
Dave, is it just you or is it you and Sandy?
Both of us.
Okay. Thanks for joining.
Eating our chicken dinner.
Okay, feel free to turn the video off then, but glad to know you're both there. Well, glad everyone's here. And oh, and I need to share that screen. That's what I need to do here. Take just a second. We'll get up the handout and we will get going. Anybody got anything to share? Anything exciting? Interesting?
Bought new chickens.
The new chickens.
information.
Chickens are exciting. Anybody else? Any other animals? We're thinking about getting chickens. We really.
Our neighbors just got their fifth goat. We've been goat sitting their smallest, teeny weeniest goat.
That's cool.
Thinking that the
Coming back to
second
Bible
one
times in a
is
certain
round.
sense.
Yeah.
Oh,
Don't limit except for roosters.
yeah.
I thought there was a max.
Well, there's a limit. I mean, there's a number that you can have, but I don't know what that is.
And no roosters, because they were-
Is it 5?
I thought it was more than that.
7?
Like 7 or 8. You can look up stealth chicken coops online and find all kinds of stuff.
It's also not the easiest thing yet.
Really? Stealth chicken coops. I'm not going to ask about the legality of that, but
There's
They usually post the rules, they say check your regulations in your county. Every
Yeah.
county's different,
Hmm.
every state is different. But yeah, there's still.
fascinating. All right, well, that's good news for those of you who are in the city and I don't know, some other city perhaps, and worried about your chickens. Well, let's go ahead and begin now because we got a lot of ground to cover. A whole lot. We'll start with a prayer. Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we ask you to be with us now as we consider Job and these central chapters in the book. Help us to be mindful of our own faith and the things that lead us to waver or to doubt, to lose hope too easily. And even when life is hard, help us to remain strong in our faith and hopeful through Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, well, let's have some review. Last week, we saw Bildad's first response to Job. That was all the way back in chapter 8. Anybody remember some basic points Bildad made? Okay. And you must have sinned. And how did he know you must have sinned? Because you're being punished for it. The only possible explanation is that you did something to deserve it. Anything else we saw? That was the main thing. He gave one more encouragement. He knew exactly what Job needed to do to fix his problem.
And you on your way.
Yeah.
Well, he also brought out not for truths to the ancestors.
Yeah, look to the ancestors, they'll tell you. And we'll see some of that in Zophar. And then we saw Job kind of break down, this is review question 2, and say some things that unmistakably cross the line and accuse God of wrong. Anything stick out at you that you recall Job saying?
Even if I were innocent too.
Yeah, that was kind of the bad one. Even if I were innocent, and later he kind of says I am innocent, you would still hold me guilty. And so God is not just after all. And he thinks this because he's being punished. And as far as he can tell, there's nothing he's done to deserve it. And then the last thing, question 3, why did Job say he needed a mediator? Anybody recall that part?
Possibly stand up to Lord Almighty.
Yeah, chapter 9, verse 32. He is not a man like me that I might answer him. 33, if only there was someone to arbitrate between us, to lay his hand upon both of us, someone to remove God's rod from me, so that terror would frighten me no more. Then I would speak up without fear of him. And that's actually how he ended chapter 9. And that's all of the review. So now we're going to look quickly at Zophar's response and then Job's longest response in the whole book. We don't get all the way through it. I will assign it for homework. And you can look at that on your own. And I'm actually going to assign about 3 other chapters for homework. We're not going to read them together next time. So this is quite long, but it's one of those where each section has usually just one simple point. So let's start with verses 1 through 6. Anybody want to start us off? John, you made eye contact. Go for it. Chapter 11, 1 through 6. Zophar, his first speech.
And Zophar the Naamathite answered, shall a multitude of words go unanswered, and a talkative man be acquitted? Shall your boast silence men, and shall you scoff and none rebuke? For you have said, my teaching is pure, and I am innocent in your eyes. But would that God might speak and open his lips against you, and show you the secrets of wisdom. For sound wisdom has 2 sides. Know then that God forgets a part of your iniquity.
Yeah, now that last line is something else. But most of what Bildad says here, or Zophar says, is true. So which parts are true, and then which part is false? Let's go through. Was Job speaking somewhat idly and inappropriately?
Not necessarily idle, maybe appropriately.
Okay, yeah. So he deserved a little bit of a rebuke there. Did Job claim his beliefs were flawless and he was pure in God's sight? Sort of. And in this lesson, he's gonna go even further. Did Job need to hear from God, like verse 5 says? Yeah, he does actually. He does need to hear from God. God's not going to say what Job thinks he's going to say, or what Zophar thinks he's going to say, but he does need to hear from it. And does he need wisdom, according to verse 6? Yes, but they all need wisdom. So there's a lot of truth to that, but there's one statement we've gotten to that's very false. Know this, is my translation. God has even forgotten some of your sin. So it's like they're just kind of ramping up the rhetoric, the same idea. Not only do you deserve this, but God is actually being merciful to you. You know, you actually deserve even worse than you're experiencing, which is pretty hard to put it, or pretty hard to conceive of how that could be. You know, how could he have gotten it much worse than he got it? But let's keep moving here because Zophar is the least interesting part. Job's answer has more to it. But verses 7 through 12. Yeah, thank you, Derek.
Can you fathom the mysteries of God? Can you probe the limits of the Almighty? They are higher than the heavens above. What can you do? They are deeper than the depths below. What can you know? The measure is longer than the earth and wider than the sea. If he comes along and confines you in prison and convenes the court, who can oppose him? Surely he recognizes deceivers. When he sees evil, does he not yet know? But the witless can no more become wise than a wild donkey's colt can be born.
Yeah, which I don't think's ever happened. So there's two basic truths. What are the basic truths Zophar refers to?
God sees everything.
Okay, first, God sees everything. So yeah, God knows everything. What were you gonna say?
Do you understand God?
Yeah. So God is beyond us, not the deepest truth, but still very true. And then the second part. Well, that's true too. That's more verse 9. I was thinking verses 10 and 11 in particular.
Well, 10 is correct.
Yeah.
Who can stand against it? Right? I mean,
Yeah. Wait, no, it is true. I think these are all true statements. No one can oppose God. So the implication is, Job, you're trying to set yourself up against God here, but nobody can do that. And you're complaining that if you were before God and you were innocent, he'd still crush you. Nobody can stand before God and be anything but guilty and expect anything but what's right. So,
I was looking at 11 just a little bit differently.
oh yeah.
Yeah, that he is, yeah, he can deceitful men and act appropriately,
Yep.
but he's also implying that Job is a deceitful man.
Yeah.
And that is not necessarily the case.
Yep. So again, it's the statements are true, the implications are false, is what we've seen again. All right, and then the last part of this section is a little longer. Zophar makes a bunch of promises, and I'd say we've heard all of them before, or at least similar promises, but what we're getting is an intensification, that it just keeps building. So how about 13 through 20? Anybody in the Zoom would like to give us some reading?
I'll try it if my audio comes out.
We have a question here from the gallery.
One last thing I noticed.
Yeah.
Verse 12, saying he can't get stupid.
Yeah, that's true. He points out that a summary verse is not really can't fix stupid.
I never considered that.
Yeah. There is some truth to that. Raise up a child in the way he should go, and when he depart from it. That verse, I think, is mistranslated. What it's saying is, if you raise up a child not in the way he should go, but in his own way, it's the literal Hebrew. In other words, you train someone up and give them used to getting whatever they want. Very hard to retrain when you get older. Anyway, that would be a similar point here. So now let's read 13 to 20. Thank you, Dave. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, who? You say Dave, okay.
We're ready. Dave Sauer.
Yet if you devote your heart.
Emily, we don't hear you.
Oh, you don't hear me?
Did I turn down the volume? Not intentionally.
I'm not
Could you?
muted.
Are you talking?
I am.
Uh-oh,
Can you
maybe
hear
I
me?
pushed a button that somehow messed up my computer. Oh no. Oh, you're right. I did. There we go. Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry about that, Dave. I had somehow muted you by mistake.
I'm used to that.
All right. Once again, 13 to 20.
Yet if you devote your heart to him and stretch out your hand to him, if you put away the sin that is in your hand and allow no evil to dwell in your tent, then you will lift up your face without shame. You will stand firm and without fear. You will surely forget your trouble, recalling it only as waters gone by. Life will be brighter than noonday, and darkness will become like morning. You will be secure because there is hope. You will look about you and take your rest in safety. You will lie down with no one to make you afraid. And many will court your favor, but the eyes of the wicked will fail, and escape will elude them. Their hope will become a dying gas.
All right. So how does he intensify the promises we've seen before?
To stop their evilness.
And things will get better than before.
Yeah. How much better than before?
Well, you're gonna get all these holes.
Yeah,
It's bigger to fit that.
yeah, verse 16, it's gonna be so good, you're not even gonna remember all this. That's really quite the promise to hold out for him. Seems pretty unreasonable to expect that. Your darkness will be like morning, just over the top promises that he doesn't know what he's saying. All right, so that's so far and pretty typical of Friends. This is why we're going to skip a few rounds, because they do get somewhat repetitive, and you can read it on your own if you like. But now we'll get to Job's response that has some new stuff and some old stuff. And we'll begin with a pretty nice insult there. Would anyone want to read verses 1 through 6? Job 12, 1 through 6. Thank you, Lance.
Then Job replied, doubtless you are the people and wisdom you die with you. Doubtless.
You are the people, and wisdom will die. Yeah.
with you. But I have a mind as well as you. I am not inferior to you. Who does not know all these things? I have become a laughing stock to my friends. Though I called upon God, and he answered, at your laughing stock. So righteousness and blameless. Men at ease have contempt for my misfortune. As the fate of those whose feet are slipping. The tents of marauders are undisturbed. Those who provoke God are secure. Those who carry their God in their hands.
Yeah, and the new NIV translates differently, but I like this one better. Either one works though. So what new information does Job reveal about the fallout from his illness? We haven't really seen this before.
It's been a laughing stock there.
Yeah, so it's not just that he's in pain, but he's an object of mockery and ridicule. He's a laughing stock. And we're going to see in chapter 29, which we'll get to sooner than you think when we skip a few chapters, that the thing that seems to have bothered him the most about all this was not the physical pain or the loss of his possessions. It was the loss of his social status and the complete reversal, not just the loss of his admiration, but then becoming an object of contempt. And he gets into details about that in chapter 28, or sorry, 29 and 30, really. 30 gets into it. First what?
Verse 2.
Doubtless you are the people, and
Oh.
wisdom will die.
So he's making fun of them. He's saying, you are like the only people that there are, and when you die, there will be no wisdom left in the world.
All the wisdom that brings
Yeah.
victory.
Because you've got it all. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty sarcastic. Yeah, the world's gonna be, yep, exactly. So he's being pretty sarcastic there. And then what does Job insinuate, this is question 5, about the source of his friend's judgmental attitude?
They carry God in their hands.
Oh, yeah. So they think that they carry God in,
Control, maybe?
yeah. What'd you say, controlled?
Yeah.
Could be. Yeah, I was thinking more verse 5. However, 6 could also be true. Men at ease have contempt for misfortune. So I think he's implying, well, it's easy for you to be here and look down. Yeah, easy for you to say, you're at ease. You're still fine. You've still got your wealth. But if you actually knew what it was like, you'd have a different story. And you hear stuff like that from people who are poor, people who are drug addicted, or, just going through hard lives. That's a common complaint. Yeah, exactly. Walk a mile in my shoes and then see. Oh, what? Oh, sorry.
Less than a mile, but when we were in Okinawa, I did our Lance's flip flops.
Yeah,
We were size 13.
yeah.
Lost your audio, Pastor.
Our steers were flights. A little jacket.
Huh.
It's big.
Okay.
Now you're back.
Mute my audio. Did I get is the audio back? Sorry about that.
Just 30 seconds ago, that's all.
Oh, okay. I have no idea what. They were just saying, walk a mile in my shoes and giving an interesting story about that. All right. Yeah. Well, I think we got the main 2 points though. So let's go on. Verses 7 through 25. Now, this is a little longer, but it's making basically 1 point, maybe a point and a half. So let's, anybody want to, how about somebody on the computer ready to read?
I can read it.
Sandy, you look like you're in great pain.
Well,
Is everything
we just
okay?
had an echo.
Yeah, you're echoing
Huh?
whatever you say.
How does my audio sound?
Big feedback.
How about now? Are you getting the echo? Is everybody getting an echo?
I'm getting echoes sometimes.
Are you getting them at this moment? No. Okay, well, I have all the Zoom people muted. So one of you, your computer's causing the echo. So I don't know who.
Somebody's spoken.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's your computer. Well, how about this? So only unmute yourself when you're speaking and the rest of the time don't. And hopefully it'll work. So, all right. I will read this one. It's longer. And if there shouldn't be an echo, we don't want an echo in a longer one. 12, 7 to 25. But ask the animals and they will teach you. Or the birds of the air, they will tell you. Or speak to the earth and it will teach you. Or let the fish of the sea inform you. Which of all these, by the way, that's kind of a strange line there. That in the Greek translation, they just took that line out about the fish. They just totally left it out. I think probably they thought it was too strange. Which of all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every creature and the breath of all mankind. Does not the ear test words as the tongue tastes food? Is not wisdom found among the aged? Does not long life bring understanding? To God belong wisdom and power. Counsel and understanding are his. What he tears down cannot be rebuilt. The man he imprisons cannot be released. If he holds back the waters, there is drought. If he lets them loose, they devastate the land. To him belongs strength and victory. Both deceived and deceiver are his. He leads counselors away stripped and makes fools of judges. He takes off the shackles put on by kings and ties a loincloth around their waist. He leads priests away stripped and overthrows men long established. He silences the lips of trusted advisors and takes away the discernment of elders. He pours contempt on nobles and disarms the mighty. He reveals the deep things of darkness and brings deep shadows into the light. He makes nations great and destroys them. He enlarges nations and disperses them. He deprives the leaders of the earth of their reason. He sends them wandering through a trackless waste. They grope in darkness with no light. He makes them stagger like drunkards. So it's a nice poem, you know, a lot of good imagery. That's one of the reasons it's considered a classic work of literature. But the questions here first, the first verses tell the friends to appeal to the animals for knowledge. What do the animals know? What is it that the animals should be able to tell?
Lord has done all of this.
Every creature
Yeah.
has breath of life.
Yeah. Yeah, so that basically God is in charge of everything. Hello, are you joining the Bible study or?
Yeah, I thought it started at 7.
Oh, no, 6:30.
Oh,
Sorry about that.
All right.
Yeah, but here's a handout and there's a Bible. Yeah, so we're right in the middle of Job chapter 12. So the animals basically know that God is in charge of everything. Now that's kind of an insult, right? Because he's saying the animals could have told me what you just told me. You know, you're not so wise as you think you are. And then 7, what point does Job make by stressing God's sovereignty here? So this whole thing is, verse 13 is a good summary. To God belong wisdom and power. How does that fit in with the argument?
God's smart enough to know what's right and what's wrong.
Okay, so God knows what's right and what's wrong. Is Job right now arguing that God is doing what's right? And
I think he's telling, so far, that it's God that's doing it. So far, it doesn't.
yeah, it seems to be something like that God does what he wills. He raises up the low, he tears down the high, and there's really nothing that people can do about it. And he's kind of agreeing with Zophar's point. I mean, he's not yet drawn an application, but he's saying, look, God can do everything. But the main thing, everything that happens is from God. And even though that's a very obvious statement, it's important to Job because he's trying to say that God has done this to me. Yeah. Yeah. Well, just wait. He's pretty much going to say that in a second here. So, all right. Conrad, could you pick some toys that are a little less loud to play with? Thank you. All right. Job 13, 1 through 12. So now we're going to see, he's going to make it personal. He's going to talk back about his friends. And probably the best insults we've seen yet. Anybody want to take chapter 13, verses 1 through 12? Someone online could try. Anna's got it. Chapter 13, 1 through 12.
My eyes have seen all this. My ears have heard and understood it. What you know, I also know. I am not inferior to you, but I desire to speak to the Almighty to argue my case with God. You, however, fear me with lies. You are a worthless physician, all of you. If only you would be altogether silent. For you, that would be wisdom. Hear now my argument. Listen to the plea of my lips. Will you speak wickedly on God's behalf? Will you speak deceitfully for him? Will you show him partiality? Will you argue the case for God? Would it turn out well if he examined you? Could you deceive him as you might deceive men? He would surely rebuke you if you secretly showed partiality. Would not his splendor terrify you? Would not the dread of him fall on you? Your maxims are proverbs of passions. Your defenses are defenses of play.
Yeah, thank you. So what is he accusing his friends of here?
You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, your arguments are worthless. They're claiming that they speak on God's behalf. Notice verse 7, but they're not speaking accurately. So that's kind of interesting. They're trying to defend God. They're trying to say, God couldn't have done anything wrong. God couldn't be treating you unjustly. And he's saying, if you were actually talking to God right now, you'd have a very different attitude. You would, you wouldn't be so smug and confident. Instead, you'd be terrified. And God would not approve of what you're saying. He would, like he says there, he would rebuke you. He would terrify you. That's kind of and let's see, is that true?
We hope.
Yeah, I mean, it does happen at the end of the book. He appears and he terrifies Job. It doesn't really talk about the friend's reaction, but we can assume that they had the same basic response, And I kind of jumped ahead of myself answering my own question. Verse 9, what does he suggest may happen if they're not careful is they'll have to be before God and explain themselves and they won't be able to. So I should have said something more about chapter 13, verse 1. My eyes have seen all this, my ears have heard and understood it. That relates to the whole previous part. He's saying, everybody knows that God is sovereign. Everybody knows that God does what he wants. But That's not my point. My point is that I'm innocent and I can't understand why I'm suffering. So when they start quoting these truisms, it doesn't help him. You know, they're talking past the situation. It's a good reminder for us when we're talking to people who are suffering or in pain, that what is it? It's very easy for us to do is to say something that's true, but that's missing the point of their situation. You know,
Can I say
you
something?
talk to somebody in pain and you say, everything happens for a reason. And they might think, okay, well, I'm glad to know there's a reason, but yeah, but I'm in a lot of pain right now. And yeah, exactly. Exactly. And really, that's not so different from everything happens for a reason. It's not exactly what they're saying, because they're saying quid pro quo karma type reason, but still it's really distracting from what the person should be focused on, is that God will be merciful and to sort of be patient. So that with that section though, I think the main thing is he's telling his friends, look, you don't know what you're talking about. You better watch your words. You're not as wise as you think. But then 13 through 19, I wanted to make sure we got at least this far, because here we finally get Job saying some positive things. And this is a real change from what we've seen. All of a sudden he expresses his faith. So would anyone like to read verses 13 through 19? For those of you on Zoom, oh, it looks like Sandy's talking. Do you want to? I'll unmute you. Or no, you're not muted. Go ahead. But we can't hear you. Oh
No.
dear.
Can you
Oh,
hear me
there we
now?
hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So 13 through 19.
Mm-hmm.
Keep silent and let me speak. Then let come to me what may. Why do I put myself in jeopardy and take my life in my hands? Though he slay me, yet will I hope in him. I surely defend my ways to his face. Indeed, this will turn out for my deliverance, for no godless man would dare come before him. Listen carefully to my words. Let your ears take in what I say. Now that I have prepared my case, I know I will be vindicated. 19.
Oh, one more.
Can anyone bring charges against me? If so, I will be silent and die. Well, here's the
Oh,
deal,
that's it.
Pastor. They don't see the big picture of what's going on, and they're just, you know, even Job doesn't know what's going on. He can't understand it. And I think, you know, God has his reason. It's not God doing this to him, it's Satan.
Yeah,
But
true.
but
Now,
he does,
God does allow it, but all the
yes.
same. Good. Were you saying something else, or that's
No.
yeah, well, thank you. Good. And good reading. So then how does Job express his faith in this section? What is kind of positive that you see?
Still gonna hope.
Yeah. I will hope. And even in what conditions?
So he will slay me.
Yeah. That's a famous verse. There's a good song that always pops up in my YouTube. That's this put to music. Though he slay me, yet I will hope in him. A remarkable statement of faith too. Like, God can execute me, you know, and I'm still going to trust. Any other phrases in here that show that he still does have faith? It's just he's not always expressing it well.
Now that I've prepared my case, I know I will be vindicated.
Yeah. So he still is holding out to God's righteousness, that, or God's justice, that he's going to get a day in court, that he's going to be vindicated. But we'll see he waffles back and forth even within this speech. Sometimes he says he will and he's confident. Other times he loses confidence. And again, that's just like when a person really suffers, really goes through something, you know, it's you vacillate back and forth. That's why I titled this Bible study, I think, More Arguing and Vacillating, because Job can't, you know, he's not stable. One line I thought I'd point out, verse 14. What is he getting at here? Why do I put myself in jeopardy and take my life in my hands? Yeah, I think he realizes that he's not speaking rightly. And, you know, why am I doing this? I think he's kind of correcting himself. Is that what you meant, or did you mean something different? Yeah, he's basically, when I talk about God like this, you know, I'm taking my life into my own hands, meaning I better be careful a thunderbolt doesn't come down and at me. And so he kind of corrects himself and says what he knows is the truth, and gives his new man at least 6 verses. Because he knows he's not going to lose the case. Now, is there anything that's off about his faith here? So, in other words, even though he does have some words that are good, and we would want to emulate that thought, maybe there's some problems too.
When he says, can anyone bring charges against me? He's kind of
You know, we had you there, Dave, and then it cut out.
uh-oh.
Oh, well, we heard you say, uh-oh.
Can anyone bring?
Hold your head exactly as you were when you said, uh-oh.
He says, anyone
yeah.
bring, are you there?
Yeah, as long as you look directly at your computer, it works. We've had this issue before.
Yes.
Your microphone doesn't have a wide range.
So again, he says, can anyone bring charges against me? He's kind of indicating he's perfect.
Yeah, he is kind of implying that he's imperfect. So he starts out defending himself saying, I haven't done anything to deserve this, you know, losing all my wealth and my family and being afflicted with boils. And when he says that in earlier chapters, he's kind of right. He hasn't done something that has deserved that specifically. But what happens is when he's defending himself, he starts to defend himself a little too much. And now he's saying, I haven't done anything wrong at all. And that's not true. So sometimes when you're defending yourself, there is this tendency to fight a little too hard, you know, to push back a little too hard. Oh, by the way, are there any Bibles back there, Leslie? Or oh, do you want one? Or oh, you have one. Oh, okay, sorry. I thought you didn't have one. Just noticed. All right, so yeah, so unfortunately, you can see as the dialogue goes along that his pride seems to get a little bit more swollen. And by the time we get to chapter 29, 30, and 31, that's at its full height. But let's go to the next section, Job 13, 20 to 28. He has a request. And now is where he turns from addressing his concerns to his friends to addressing God directly. Last week, Kelly said, oh, I'm so glad you didn't call on me when you almost did. So I guess I won't ask her to read. Anybody?
I'll read again.
Thank you.
Is it adjusted right here?
Is it adjusted?
Well, I mean, you can hear me
Oh,
okay.
it's good. It's very good. Yes.
Only grant me these 2 things, O God, and then I will not hide from you. I will not withdraw your hand far from me and stop frightening me with your terrors. Then summon me and I will answer, or let me speak, and you reply, how many wrongs and sins have I committed? Show me my offense and my sin. Why do you hide your face and consider me your enemy? Will you torment a wind-blown leaf? Will you chase after dry chaff? For you write down bitter things against me and make me inherit the sins of my youth. You fasten my feet in shackles. You keep close watch on all my paths by putting marks on the soles of my feet. So man wastes away like something rotten, like garments eaten by moths.
Yeah. And then 3 questions here. What does he request from God there? Question 12.
Not tormenting me.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So 2 things. Stop tormenting me and let me know what I did wrong, which I was getting at that with really question 13. What does he wonder about God? Which is more what you were saying. What did I do? You know, what are you thinking? Why are you doing this? Why are you tormenting me like a leaf? He says. And then verse 28, this is just a note. It seems a little out of place. And just man wastes away like something rotten, like a garment eaten by moths. I mean, it does work. It's not like it's terribly out of place, but you'd maybe expect him to say that more so than you might expect him to say, but I am wasting away. Why does he say man wastes away? And some people have, I think it works fine here, but just pointing out that's it's a difficulty in the Hebrew text. And sometimes
Goes
people,
into 14 and they had to put 14 someplace.
yeah, but in the Hebrew, it starts with a conjunction, 28 does, which wouldn't, see, it would almost work well as the start of the next section, but in Hebrew, it's less because it starts with a conjunction. However, it could be, maybe it's better to just say chapter 14 starts at verse 28. So the chapter divisions are not always accurate. They say the guy who did it, he was riding a horse and occasionally they went over a big bump and he just slipped and they didn't quite get the divisions where they should be. Then 14 is a little more philosophy. So yeah, he's sad. He wants to know why. He's getting stressed. He wants to be left alone. He basically just needs a break. And he's not getting it. 1 to 16. I'll just read 1, and I think that gets the idea. Man born of woman is of few days and full of trouble. And the rest of it just keeps going like a blues song. There's just nothing good. The verse 5, man's days are determined. You have decreed the number of his months. Verse 6, so look away from him and let him alone till he's put in his time like a hired man. All that is repetition. So let's go on to 7 to 17. This is a little bit more of a meaty section. So anyone ready for 7 to 17? Thank you. Lance
At
has got it.
least there is hope for a tree. If it is cut down, it will sprout again, and its new shoots will not fail. Its roots may grow old in the ground, and its stump die in the soil. Yet at the scent of water, it will bud and put forth shoots like a plant. But man dies and is laid low. He breathes his last and is no more. As water disappears from the sea or a riverbed is parched and dry. So man lies down and does not rise until the heavens are no more. Then he will not awake or be roused from their sleep. Only you would hide me in the grave and conceal me till your anger has passed. If only you would set me a time and then remember me. If a man dies, will he live again? All the days of my hard service, I will wait for my renewal to come. You will call and I will answer. You will long for the future your hands have made. Surely then you will count my steps, but not keep track of my sin. My offenses will be sealed up in a bag. You will cover my sin.
Yeah. So this section is really kind of a little confusing because at first he says, that first half, 7 to 12, what's his point about why would it be better to be a tree than a person?
You see the chance of coming back to life.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's what he's saying. However, we think, well, wait a minute, does he not believe in the afterlife? Now, here, it's this note I thought was pretty helpful, so I copied it. Question 15, it's really just a note. It sounds like Job is denying the afterlife at first, but then he seems to confirm it. And that's true. Look at the end of 14. I will wait for my renewal to come. You will call and I will answer you. You will long for the creature your hands have made. So it almost sounds like he's saying there will be this response. And we'll see that next week, especially in chapter 19, when he says, I know that my Redeemer lives, and in the end, he'll stand upon the earth. So he does have hope for the afterlife that's expressed a couple times in this book. So what's his point here? Well, this note I thought was helpful. Since the focus of this section is mortal life, Job's question does not specifically pertain to his thoughts on life after death, which he possibly alludes to in verse 12. Meaning, it's true, in Job's view, Job didn't know the details of Christ and the resurrection, but he did have a sense of living on with God. And he maybe, in 19, it kind of sounds like a resurrection, but his point here is that, but to the fact that there is no chance for vindication through restored life on earth after suffering and death. So his point is not really what happens in the afterlife or at the final day, but once I die, I'm never going to come back and tell my friends, And we'll see in chapter 19, that's kind of his complaint. He says, I know that my Redeemer lives, and I know that I will see him, but the problem is that's not going to happen until I've died, and I'm never going to get to prove to my friends that I was right. So that seems to kind of be what's going on here. Because he does hold out hope. I mean, how do you understand verses 14, 15, and 16? That's not exactly how I worded on the handout, but.
He says, God, you won't keep track of my sin.
Yeah, you will not keep track of my sin. So he looks forward to a time when his sin is forgotten.
You will cover over my sin.
There's no more punishment for his sin. Covered over, put in a bag, gone.
He sees that God is going to love him. He's going to call him and will answer.
Yeah, so he seems to sense that God's not going to cast him away forever. And it's interesting that this comes right on the heels of his statement that, once you die, you're dead, and that's it. Verse 13 was interesting. If you would only hide me in the grave and conceal me till your anger has passed. If only you would set me a time and then remember me. So.
Then he wouldn't have to listen to his friends anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That seems to be what he wants.
I don't blame
So
him.
he does have some hope, but it's certainly confused, and it's not, the clear confession of faith we'd like. But we got to remember, he's not just living before Christ; he's living before Moses. I mean, he's living before any of the Bible's been written, and they didn't have as clear of a view as what happens on the last day. And his concern is, we're going to see, it's his friends. He's been made a laughing stock. He wants to prove to everybody that he's right. This is his last desire. And, restore his good name before he dies. And he's frustrated he can't do that. But then 18 to 22, maybe just, I'll pick 2 verses and focus on those. But as a mountain erodes and crumbles, and as a rock is moved from its place, as verse 20, or no, the end of 19, I'll just read 19. As water wears away stones and torrents wash away the soil, so you destroy man's hope. So the picture that he's like a mountain and just slowly, the mountain erodes slowly, the water slowly erodes. It doesn't happen quickly. So the picture is just, he's getting beaten down and worn down, and he is losing his hope. It's just fading away. And it's sad, 21, if his sons are honored, he does not know it. If they are brought low, he does not see it. Meaning he doesn't know what happens to his kids after they die. Will they be successful? Will they be embarrassed? He feels but the pain of his own body and mourns only for himself. We all die alone, and everyone else goes on living, although they eventually die too. So pretty sad. But you see, his concern is that once he dies, his interaction with his friends is over. His chance to prove he was right is done. And that's what frustrates him so much. So we're kind of getting a little more of Job's psychology coming out, what he's really thinking. And as I've alluded to now a few times, when we get to 29, 30, and 31, that is the kind of high point where he spills everything. He talks about what he used to love about his old life. Then he'll talk about all the stuff that's happened now, and not just the suffering, but then how he's being treated by everybody. And then in 31, he just takes these series of oaths that I never did this. I never stole. I never cheated. I never lied. I never committed adultery. I was never rude. I was never unkind. I remembered the poor. And just saying, I didn't do anything to deserve this, because he wants to clear his name before he died. But that'll be a couple weeks from now. So then this time I gave homework. It's the first time, but again, just to avoid too much repetition, your homework is chapters 15 to 17. And this will be Eliphaz, his second reply, and Job's reply to him, which is 2 chapters. And they're good. I mean, I like them, but I just think I was going through, and I think these are chapters that could be skipped because there's not much new in terms of the ideas. However, there is ramping up of intensity. So the insults are pretty good, like even as good or better than the ones we saw today. I would say though, pay special attention to chapter 16, verses 18 to 21, where again, we get a little glimmer of Job having some hope. So even if you don't read the whole thing, maybe just read that. And then next time when we start, you can bring any comments or questions from that section, and we'll look at it as much time as we need, but we won't read the whole thing together, just to save time. But then next week, we will look at chapters 18 to 21, which seems like a lot, but the chapters actually get shorter as the dialogue goes on. They have less and less to say. And that'll be the famous, "I know that my Redeemer lives" statement. So we can look at that in a little more detail. And then chapter 21, they really start to shift their focus to the wicked. And does God really always punish the wicked? Or is that something we tell ourselves, but it doesn't actually come true? It's Job's question. Any final thoughts or questions from anybody on Zoom or here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
13 verse 26.
Yeah.
At the end it says, "And make me inherit the sins of my youth, and forgive many who sinned as I youth."
I think so, yeah. Let me see here. Job comes before Psalms in the Hebrew Bible, it doesn't, but it does here. 13:6.
13:26.
Oh yeah, "For you write down bitter things against me and make me inherit the sins of my youth." Yeah, so he's saying basically, you're taking all the sins that I committed when I was a kid, and now you're punishing me for them. You're more or less. So he's not claiming to be perfect in that particular moment. So I think his friends are exaggerating a little bit. But just to give you an idea, why don't you go look at chapter 31, and we're going to see where he goes. Chapter 31, verse 35. I hate to give away this exciting part. Just to see how his pride kind of carries him away by that time you get there. Chapter 31, verse 35 to 37. "Oh, that I had someone to hear me. I sign now my defense. Let the Almighty answer me. Let my accuser put his indictment in writing. Should I wear it? Surely I would wear it on my shoulder. I would put it on like a crown. I would give him an account of my every step. Like a prince, I would approach him." So,
Yeah, me too.
yeah. He's almost saying, bring it on, God, I'm ready. I can account for every single thing I've done. I've got nothing to hide. And of course, when God does appear, that's not at all what he says. He's very humble and repentant. Okay, so that's where we're going. So Job's pride is building up to that. And it goes to show you, be careful not to falsely accuse somebody. Because if you falsely accuse someone, you put them in a position of defending themselves, and often you do work in overdrive to kind of you exaggerate your defenses, and you kind of, the best defense is a good offense, and then you push someone into a bad position. And if you're ever falsely accused or accused rightly, be very careful of your sinful nature, and its first instinct is to kind of fight back, and that gets Job into a lot of trouble. And not a lot of gospel here, but maybe we can end with just one thought from Isaiah 53. So Job goes through all this. Oh, battery's running low. Job goes through all this and doesn't know why it's happening, but it says, Jesus, by oppression and judgment, he was taken away. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we were healed. He knew exactly what he was doing and that it was the most unfair thing that could happen, but he did it for us. And so it's a contrast with Job, but a good reminder. All right, well, blessings, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm going to end this real quick because I have to go plug in my computer, or we're not going to be able to save this.